Hello everyone and welcome back to another 3D revolution. In this video we're going to be looking at laser test grids and how to figure out the best settings for laser engraving on different materials. Let's have a look. With laser engraving, you will find a massive range of recommended settings online to use. But not only does it really matter which machine you're using, whether it's a snap maker or something completely different, it also really matters what material you're engraving on. So obviously it's going to make a huge difference if you're engraving on some anodized aluminium compared to a bit of wood. But even if you ordered the same bit of wood from the same supplier twice in a year, maybe a few months apart, that could have different properties in the piece that you've received, and therefore you might need different settings to achieve your desired goal. As a result, the best thing to do is to do what is called a laser test grid, which is basically taking a bit of the material that in future you're going to engrave on and engraving onto that a grid which has different settings across the grid and will demonstrate what the effect of each of these settings will have for you, and then you can choose the best one. So it can take a while to put these together. I've put a selection of grids together for different features. I'm going to take you through them now on the computer, but they are uploaded to my website so you can download them and use them yourself. And I've also uploaded the project files so you can tweak them yourself if you want anything different on them for your machine or material. So let's have a look at the grids. Okay, so this is the first of the laser grids that I've prepared, and this is probably the main one that you're going to want to use, at least when you're using completely new material. So on the left here, you've got your laser power from 10% up to 100%, and then your work speed from 500 to 1400 millimeters a minute. It's worth noting that if you're using Luben for Snapmaker, this setting is usually in millimeters per minute, but on things like Lightburn, this setting would be millimeters a second, and so obviously you would be reading a different figure for these. Each section, which abides by the power percentage and the work speed here, has three different components. So there is a black square, just to show you how a solid black area is going to behave, which is more likely to become burnt because it's quite an intense area. You've got an image, and then you've got a letter. So the image and the square are both in this grid going to be engraved using the line fill engrave method, and the letter is going to be a vector engraving. So if we go to the processes here, you can see I've got the work speed titles and the power titles are engraved first, and then all of the other engravings go in order. So we've got the 500 by 100 line engraving and the 500 by 100 vector engraving, and it goes all the way down through all of these. So you can, if you need to change any of these settings, you can do so there. But if we were to look into the setting here, you can see they are all also all the line engraving on this grid is set to 0.15 millimeters fill interval, and yeah, the work speed and power are what are being tested here. So that's going through all of them. Oh, just so you know, the image that we're using here is probably difficult to tell in this setting at the moment, but this is a penguin image. It's a photo that I took when I was working on South Georgia Island. Yeah, so you've got your penguin photo, a black square, and your letter. So that will test two different types of engraving on three different formats across a variety of different settings. Now, an important thing to bear in mind here is if you're using a stronger laser or something like the Snapmaker 10-watt laser, if you're working on a bit of wood, 100% power at 500 millimeters a minute is going to probably set fire to that bit of wood, and even slightly lower than that is going to at the very least burn all the way through. So if you download and use my grids, I've got a second grid referred to as low power, which is this exact one here, but it's without, it only goes up to 50% power. So I've got rid of these 5 rows basically, and then it makes it smaller as well. Also note on the naming of the files on my website, I've also included the dimensions of what the current grid setup is. If you need to make them bigger or smaller, you can obviously open the project file and then just resize everything to whatever you need it to be. What I would note is if you are opening the project file for any of these grids, because they incorporate quite a lot of different files and a lot of different settings, they can take quite a long time to open. So double click it, let it start opening. It's going to probably look like it's frozen for a bit. Go and make yourself a nice coffee, come back, and then hopefully you should be able to get into it. If you have any issues, definitely let me know. So then let's have a look at the next set of grids. So once you've found out the perfect work speed and power for your engraving, if you're engraving an image, then you're likely also going to want to know, well, you're going to be choosing between a line fill or a dot fill. So you'll then want to find out what the best interval is, the best resolution is with the right power to get to the detail you want without burning it too much. So let's have a look at those grids. So here we have the power versus interval. So I've got two different interval image grids. We've got, this is the line fill engraving. There is also the dot fill engraver, depending on which direction you want it to go, because the setting is going to be different for each of them. One thing I'll quickly mention is all the grids that I've uploaded here, both as the project file and as G-code, they're all weighted in the top left. So when you are selecting the position to engrave on your engraver, the top left is the origin point of all of these files. Obviously, if you open the project file, you can change that for yourself if you would rather something else, but the top left is the origin point for all of these projects. Okay, so on the power versus interval for the line fill and the dot fill, it's exactly the same setup. We've got just the photos because we've already tested the black block and the text across the power and work speed. So the interval is what we're looking at here. You can obviously change the image for anything that you like, but I would recommend making sure that your image has a variance of light and white color as well as dark color and a gradient, because this is going to allow you to see what areas are going to be difficult to show up and what areas are going to burn all the way through your material. So it's going to give you a good contrasting impression here. And then if we have a look at the processes, again, it's all named so you can pick out each individual ones. So that's 0.06 millimeters by 50%. So that's this one here. And we can have a look in that. And then you've got the interval and the laser power changing here. All of these are set to a standard work speed of 800 millimeters a minute. Obviously this is only a test, so what you would do is you would take your work speed that you found worked for you on your previous grid, and then once you figured out the good interval and power setting here, you can then apply that when you're doing your actual engravings at a later stage. And if we have a look at the preview of this test grid, if we look at the bottom right hand side with the lowest resolution, you can see the lines here are really far apart and the resolution is really low, whereas if we compare that to the opposite end, you can see a really fine level of detail. And then obviously as you go up the power, the laser burn that these marks make are going to overlap more and therefore are going to become darker and more ingrained in your material, and that is why we have this grid in the first place. Okay, so let's have a look at how these have come out. And here is the first of those grids, the work speed and power grid. So you can see here across the top we've got the work speed and along the side we've got the power. Now what you'll really notice is that this is the lower end one, because I'm using the 10-watt laser. I didn't want to use anything higher than 50% power because it would probably just set fire to the bit of wood. So if you are using a particularly strong laser, make sure that you're using this one or adjusting the powers in the project file I've uploaded for you. But you can see even here with the 50% at the slower end of working, it's actually burned through to the back of the wood, and we're not looking at cutting here, we're only looking at engraving, so you didn't want anything stronger than that. But on this you can see it goes from burning through the wood all the way to a barely visible engraving. So along this line we can then find the best settings for both work speed and for power. If you're engraving an image, you're also going to want to choose between dot and line fill engraving, and you're going to want to choose the best settings for that. So the resolution and power in these settings are also going to vary depending on the material you're using and obviously the machine you're using as well. So the interval and power grid we've got here does the same thing. So again, at the very top end of the grid we have burned all the way through to the back, and then at the very bottom it's barely visible. So along this grid you can find both the best resolution, the best quality of it, and then also the best darkness and the best intensity to engrave that at. So you can use this to find the best settings for that as well. Okay, so I hope you guys have found this video useful and you're now better set up for the settings you need for your laser engraving. Don't forget that all of the grids that I made for this video I've popped on my website, ready for you guys to download in either G-code or in the Lubin project file format so you can make any changes to it before you use it. I popped a link into all of them in the description below, as well as to things like the snap maker and some recommended bits of wood that you can have a play around with. If you've got any questions or if you'd like me to cover anything else, don't forget to pop them in the comments below. Otherwise, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks very much.